Hello, everybody. Welcome again to the Rare Book Cafe, the coffee break edition. We are the Book Lovers Rendezvous, and we never get tired of rendezvousing with our guest this week, Richard Mori. Ciao, Richard.
Hey, Ed. Oh, Lee. Good to see
Hello,
you.
Richard.
Are you eating all the spaghetti in Italy yet, or are we going to have to...
Only as much as I can afford. And, of course, my weekly co-host, Lee Linn from The Ridge Books in Calhoun, Georgia. Gosh, Lee, I think this is going to be our 29th show. And I finally got your name and location right.
That's right. That's very good. That's very good.
Richard, we can't let the week go by without hearing about the show that's coming up. The Boston Shadow Fair.
Let me tell you, this is going to be one of the most exciting events to happen in Boston in a long time. Books in Boston, October 28th at the Back Bay Hilton. 3-minute walk from the ABAA show, the International Antiquarian Book Fair show at the Hynes Auditorium. We're going to we're expecting a good crowd. We're doing a lot of promotion activity. And it's a 25-year tradition, and people just love coming to Boston to buy books.
Well, Richard, I saw the list of some of the dealers that are going to be there, and you've got some A-plus names. Bauman's got a booth, University Archives, Peter Stern. Are they going to have a booth at both shows?
Bauman and University Archive is at both shows. I'm trying to think who else. Scott DeWolf, Scott and Frank. Frank's son is coming, and he's going to be setting up at our show, so they're going to be at both shows. We'd love to have them. And, of course, we've got some wonderful dealers from all over. Bill Lippincott from Maine, who's been doing the show, I think, almost as long as I have. Because you can't do a show in Boston without Peter Luke. Everybody knows Peter. He's got some of the best.
I'll tell you, Peter was very kind to me early in my career. He gave me a whole stack of material to put on consignment because, Peter mostly only does shows and doesn't sell online. So he said, here, take this stack and see what you can do with it. And he was very generous when I was a newbie.
So we also have a dealer from Toronto, Rare Photo Gallery, and we have a dealer from England. I think Patrick Wainwright is from England. We've got dealers from Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Florida coming up.
Ooh la la. Lee, don't you wish you had enough material that you could do the 2 shows in the same weekend?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Enough material and enough help.
And
enough money.
And Ben is coming down from Vermont. I think he's coming in on snowshoes or sled dog. I forget which one. He's coming in from Vermont. So we've got dealers representing all of New England, New York, Pennsylvania, and Florida, and Georgia. Don't forget Georgia, Canada, and England. So listen, we're going to have to start putting the name International Book Fair behind it.
That's right.
There you go. Well, folks, this is the Rare Book Cafe. So if you don't mind, I'm going to do a little bit of cafeing here.
Okay. Well, you do that, Ed. Listen, I had to, I'm a big White Mountain book collector. I've been doing it since I was 12 years old. So that's over 60 years I've collected White Mountain material. And so it really takes a little bit for me to get excited. And I have to tell you, in the last week, I have gotten excited because I have found 3 things that are spectacular in the White Mountain Rare Book collection.
And these are items you've never handled before?
Actually, I've handled this one before, but this is one of the rarest of the White Mountain pieces. This is the first Appalachian Mountain Club guide for the White Mountains. It is spectacular. It was done in 1907. Even though it says part 1, there was never a part 2. So this is complete. And what's lovely is that inside there are the maps. These maps are almost always missing. And oops,
Now you see why they're missing.
yes.
Yes.
And then the other map is here as well. This is there's two versions of this map. This is the 1911 reprint. So in fact, finding one of these, and this book is in gorgeous condition. And this is an example. People wonder, where do you get things? I buy a lot of great stuff from dealers. I bought this from a dealer in New Hampshire I've known for decades. And I'm really excited to have this at the show. And on top of it, this is actually where I started collecting, was the AMC guide. So my very first purchase at an auction when I was 12 years old was a 1928 AMC guide, and I eventually collected the entire series of this, which I still have.
Well, Richard, why don't you comment on that for a moment? Because we all buy things from other dealers. And why do we do that? Why is it if one dealer can't sell something, we think we can?
Well, my experience, Ed, and yours may be a little different, but each of us have our own market, people who we've got to know, collectors. And because I have the passion for the white mountain material, I tend to get attracted to it. And the collectors and buyers also get attracted to me because of that passion. And what I bring to the table is the years of knowledge I have on handling material, like knowing that there are two versions of this map. That's important to know. To know that there should be two maps in the book, so that when I sell it, I'm selling it complete. Those are the things that are really important, and that's what we bring to the business, is our value-added insight and knowledge.
Right. And even though you may not have that whole collection of them, you've had it. And you know the sequencing of it, changes in the maps.
Yeah.
Because probably if you tried to use that first map, the trails would be different now.
Yeah,
I know.
exactly.
I know I read something recently about the many changes in the Appalachian Trail. From year to year.
And in fact, I think they're up to over 30 editions of the AMC guide. They don't come out every year. Matter of fact, there's 1907. It's not until 1913 that the next edition comes out. And then they do a couple more in the teens, but then they only do two in the 20s. I think there are two in the 30s. There's two in the 40s, and then in the 50s and 60s they start really doing more. And there are variations, and the collectors like to be able to compare the old material with the new material to find out where the changes have been. The topography changes because of the mountains and the weather. So there's lots of reasons why. Also, there's also little insights, like in an AMC guide and a hiking guide. There will be little insights about the trail that somebody put in at one time, but it was taken away at another time, so you lose that consistency of knowledge.
Or you may find marginal notes that a hiker.
Exactly.
And those are in trail guides are wonderful to run across.
Yeah.
Now, Richard, about 12 years ago, I accompanied my son from the New Hampshire, Maine border all the way to Mount Washington on the Appalachian Trail. Were you ever a hiker yourself on the trail?
As a young boy, I hiked a lot in the White Mountains, Mount Washington being one of them. I love the mountains. I'm very fond. I haven't done in New Hampshire. We have what's called the 4,000 Foot Club. There are 48 mountains over 4,000 feet. I'm not a member of that club, although I've done maybe 8, 10, or 12. I forget.
What's the number again? How many 4,000 peaks? 45?
48.
48.
And if you do 40, you get to become a member of the 4,000 Footer Club.
Now, we happen to be doing it over the 4th of July weekend, and they had put American flags on top of each of the 48 peaks. And we were at a point where we could see about 14 or 15 of them, and it was truly a magnificent sight to see the American flags on top of all of these mountain peaks.
I actually have a very good friend of mine from North Carolina, I know through the Boy Scout world. His son, Jay, is actually just finishing the Appalachian Trail. He left last spring from Georgia, and I followed him all summer and all spring and summer and into the fall. And, I cautioned his boy early on that Mount Washington can be very, very tricky. Well, if when he got to the Mount Washington part of the journey, he had the most perfect weather. And he sent a picture one morning. It was at sunrise when he was sitting atop Mount Madison, which is next to Mount Washington, in this most gorgeous, clear blue sky sunrise. And I'll tell you, and his trek through the White Mountains was almost flawless. He had no serious weather at all, no rain. It was, and I kept telling him how terrible it was going to be. But he's experiencing the bad weather now that he's in Maine. And he's got about 2 weeks left, I think, or a little less, maybe.
Good for him.
10 days. So he's
quite an accomplishment.
That really is.
We're
And he missed the black fly season.
He did too. Yeah, he did too.
We've done segments in Tennessee and North Carolina, but I'm talking about 4 or 5 miles segments, and then that'll do it for this trip. But it's I have nothing but an admiration for anybody who tackles the whole thing. A friend from here who used to be a teacher here has done that this year, and had an accident at some point and had to go off the trail for a while, but managed, and he came north to south, and but he managed to finish. He managed to finish.
And there are people who finish it over a longer period of time.
Right.
And there are thousands. I mean, I'm telling you, Ed, this is like they can't have traffic jams on the trails now. There's so many people hiking those trails. So it's really amazing. So here's one of the other. I have 3 items I'm really excited about today. This one is actually a very common book. This is Chisholm's Guide to not Chisholm. I'm sorry. Let me back up. This is Sweetser's Guide to the White Mountains. This is a late edition. He started in the 1880s producing this. This is from the, I think, 1916. But a beautiful copy. You can see how gorgeous the leather is. Not the leather, the cloth, the red cloth, gilt stamping. And on top of it, there is the dust jacket, which is very scarce on this book because guides like this, the jackets were discarded because they got away when they're out hiking. And then on top of this, and this is the real treat, laid into the book is this promotional sheet with a map of the White Mountains. I've never seen this before. It is really one of the most spectacular pieces. So it's a tissue paper, so very, very fragile, very, very susceptible to damage and loss. And this was part of the book. I couldn't believe it. And it was a dealer I knew who knew I was going to be at a show, and he brought it to me. And again, this is why I buy from dealers. Dealers know me. They know I'll buy things, and they bring things to me. I'm sure you and Lee have both had that experience.
And plus, dealers that you've known for a long time, and you know that the material they have is what they say it is.
Yep.
And that they have done research on it, and you feel comfortable buying from someone with that kind of expertise.
Yeah. And part, I've had dealers, and this is absolutely true. I had a dealer in Michigan one time. I spent several months chasing something. He called me up. He knew I was coming back to Michigan. Called me up and said, "I've got them for you when you arrive." And I walked in the store. Before he even touched the book, he looked at me and said, "Richard, I am going to sell these to you very, very cheap so you can make lots of money." Those are his exact words. And I did.
How nice.
And I owned them for less than 24 hours.
Wow.
Ooh la la.
Yeah.
And now drum roll, please. Number 3.
Number 3, again, a piece that is somewhat common. It's not rare in terms of you never see it, but this is a guidebook and map to the White Mountains done by Boardman. Boardman did the number of maps on the White Mountains. This is from 1858, so it isn't early, but not the very first map. Maps of the White Mountains go back to the 1700s, actually. But this is considered one of the really good early guides. This is before the AMC guide. This is before Eastman's. Well, actually, the Eastman guide had just come out about the same time this had come out. Eastman's guide was the first guide of the White Mountains. But this is specific to a complete guide to the way. Here's the title page. What's again spectacular? And I'm not going to open it up because they're very fragile, and I don't want to do anything to the creepers. But this comes with the map, which oftentimes has been excised from the book. But here it is complete. But here's the bonus: in the front, they laid in a second map, which is not part of the original book. And this is another map by Boardman, and it's the railroad guide to the railroad routes going to the White Mountains. Now, why is this important? First of all, tourism in the United States actually starts in New Hampshire. The very first tourist location that's identifiable both by Abel Crawford. Crawford Notch is named after him. In 1820, he had a home that he rented rooms to people, and he would guide them up what's now known as the Crawford Path. He and his sons cut a path to the top of Mount Washington, and that was the very first tourism in the United States. So New Hampshire's been doing tourism over 200 years. Actually, 200 years. And so it's really exciting to find something. And by the 1850s, now remember, railroads don't really start gaining any steam, excuse the pun, until the 1820s. But by the 1850s, we have several different railroad lines going in and out of the White Mountains, from Maine, Massachusetts, going over to Vermont. And by the 1860s, we had large hotels being built in the White Mountains, the Crawford House. 1900 is the Mount Washington Hotel. We had the Fabian House, the Profile House. In Bethlehem, they had several different big hotels eventually. So this is really, really significant. And what's most important, I'm going to just show you this. So this is a book about maps, annotated maps of New Hampshire. This is a reference book I use. And that railroad map by Boardman is not listed in what we call COS. It's his COS book on maps of New Hampshire. And that railroad map is not listed in COS, which is very significant.
Richard, not only do you find amazing things, but you are just so knowledgeable. And that's another thing customers get when they show up to a book fair, the chance to talk to dealers and learn these things that aren't everyday knowledge.
And while they may be interested in a specific item that you have the opportunity to introduce them, like with the White Mountains, to other things in that same field, to expand their knowledge, and sometimes they expand yours.
Exactly. And in fact, and again, why I bring this up, I bought this from a bookseller from New York, but who cut his teeth in the book trade in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and he knows New Hampshire material because that's how he started in the business handling it. And he worked for one of the big dealers who handled early New Hampshire material. And he did not catch the importance of that second map.
He knows it now.
Yeah, he will know, yes.
All right, Richard, we're about to bring episode 31 to a close. Give us a final plug on the show. Lee, why don't you jump in there so people know what they're going to be seeing when they meet you at the show as well?
Well, going to a place I've never been, it's hard to decide what to take. I will have a fair amount of, we mentioned earlier that I had just purchased some new signed Langston Hughes material. I'll have a fair amount of African American related. I'm also bringing a display of Roland Hayes, the American tenor who lived for 50 years in Brookline, Massachusetts. And there's a monument to him there, and I'm bringing books and records and programs and information about him. Plus some Southern lit. You got to bring some Southern lit when you're in Georgia. So that's kind of what I'll be bringing.
Richard, take us out.
So we're going to see everybody who listens to this program in Boston on October 28th for the most exciting two book fairs. The Boston Antiquarian Book Fair that's been, I think we're almost in the 50th year now, and the Books in Boston Fair, which is the continuation of a 25-year tradition. Hope you're there because it is going to be an exciting time.
All right, everybody. That's another wrap up from the Rare Book Cafe. We hope you're out and about and cafeing with us while you're listening to the show. You can find us every week on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and wherever podcasts are given away for free. That's it, everybody. Thanks for rendezvousing with us. Ciao, Richard.
Enjoy, Ed. Looking forward.
Peace, Lee.
And have one of those drinks for us.
That'll be 3.
Oh dear.
All right, if you insist. Ciao, Bella.